Okay. So let's welcome Anuj Prabhu 3 times Hari Bol first. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So he's our youth leader here in ICNJ. He's been there, grown in community. He's been training other youth members. He's been Bhakti Club president in the Ruggers, and he's currently he's worked in Bank of America, and now he's communication leader. Communication is working in the communication department basically. So let's welcome and hear from him what he has to say today. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for having me. Krishnanand Prabhu was just saying that he's looking forward to what I have to say, so I feel a lot of pressure now. What am I going to say? Start off with some invocations and Jai Radha Madhava and go into our class. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone. Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Om. Hey. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine. Bolo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, everyone. Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Panchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev Cha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Hey, well, really happy to be with all of you. Seeing a lot of friendly faces, which is always great, and some new faces too. Definitely going to acknowledge it's my first time giving class at the temple here, at least. So I have to say I'm a little nervous and speaking in front of so many devotees who have raised me. My father also sitting here, dad's there. And so many other devotees who have raised me for so many years actually had opportunity to grow up in this community for the last 20 years or so. And so really so many memories, not even just here, but in the different places that we were before here, different halls that we were. I'm sure Jai Prakash Prabhu remembers all of that as well too. We'll dive in. I'm going to speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam, one verse that I felt like was really important. And the topic we'll be speaking about today is envy. Envy. It's something very important, I think, sometimes that we don't talk about it enough in our spiritual communities, actually, because envy is it's one of the main anarthas, the 6 anarthas that are talked about in our Vedic literature. And so it's important that we get an understanding of what envy is, how it applies to our life, how it might show up, and how we can also deal with envy. It's a very challenging thing to deal with, let alone just to even acknowledge to begin with. I want to, just give, again, respects and honors to all the devotees here, and then also my parents also here. So thank you for being here and supporting me always. So the verse we're reading from is the 19th chapter of the 9th canto, the 15th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I believe Prahlad Maharaj is speaking this verse, actually. He's actually the most qualified to talk about not being envious because he exemplifies this in full. I'll read the Sanskrit, we'll go to the translation, and then we'll go into some thoughts on this verse. Yadana kurute bhavam sarva bhuteshva mangalam samadrishtra tada pumsa sarva sukhamaya disha. Translation: when a man is non-envious and does not desire ill fortune for anyone, he is equipoised. For such a person, all directions appear happy. I'll read that again. For when a man is non-envious and does not desire ill fortune for anyone, he is equipoised. For such a person, all directions appear happy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It's a small purport. Srila Prabhupada ki. Prabodhananda Saraswati has said, Vishwam Purna Sukhayate, when one becomes Krishna conscious by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, for him the entire world appears happy, and he has nothing for which to hanker. On the Brahma Bhuta stage, or the platform of spiritual realization, there's no lamentation or no material hankering. No sochti na kanchti. This is a reference to the Gita verse. Brahma Bhuta Basaranatma. As long as one lives in the material world, actions and reactions will continue. But when one is unaffected by such material actions and reactions, he is to be considered free from the danger of being victimized by material desires. The symptoms of those who are satisfied with lusty desires are described in this verse. As explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when one is not envious even of his enemy, does not expect honor from anyone, but instead desires all well-being even for his enemy, he is understood to be a Paramahamsa, or one who is fully subdued the lusty desires for sense gratification. Haribo. So we can pull up the little presentation that I have. Not this one. No. This looks like from last week, maybe. Haribo. Yes, there you go. You can put it on a slideshow view. So I wanted to talk about envy and jealousy. It's something that we often see in our community, and we can see in ourselves and in the human condition of life, actually. Not that it's a bad thing, it's there. And in this verse, it's stated that when one gives up, when one is non-envious and gives up all desire for ill fortune for others, then we can be equal poised, actually. For such a person, all directions appear happy. Now, and then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that even one who doesn't desire ill fortune for their enemy, they're considered a Paramahamsa. How many of us can say that we wouldn't desire ill fortune for our enemies or people who don't like us, right? It's harder, right? We can all relate to this. And by the way, this class, I'm going to keep it practical. So we're not going to be super in the intellectual kind of spiritual realms. We'll have that there, but I want us to all think about this verse and these principles through our life, through our day-to-day interactions and relationships, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's colleagues, coworkers, whatever the case, our children, our spouses, our partners. We want to think about this, right? Our relatives, whatever the case is for you. Think about this from that lens. What are you struggling with? What are your challenges, right? And really being honest with ourselves. Sometimes we say, "Oh, everything's good, everything's great," right? Everything's going well, when everything's kind of like falling apart sometimes, right, in our life. So we can be honest. Sometimes we can't be honest, but we can also be honest with ourselves, at least to begin with, right? So I want to kind of set the table that's what this class is going to be. There's, very esoteric spiritual topics. We can talk about those, but I want us to get into that like practical, relevant realm of how do we improve our life by keeping Krishna in the center. And this is how we can do that. Make sense? Yeah? Okay, Harima. So when we talk about envy, again, it's more subtle. Sometimes we don't even want to admit we're envious of another devotee, of someone else, or a friend of ours, or a family member. We don't want to admit it, right? Because it kind of feels like, oh, I'm admitting some insecurity I have. But we can see that this is part of the human condition, that we feel envious sometimes. Let's talk about the definitions. How do we define envy and jealousy? So we can look at the screen here. This is just from the dictionary, by the way. Not the Shastra, the dictionary, Merriam-Webster, I think. So envy is a painful or resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by another, joined with a desire to possess the same advantage. So someone has something, I want that. Right? Why don't I have that? And then jealousy. Jealousy is also like a cousin, or you can say like a younger brother of envy, right? Jealousy. Definition: feeling or showing an unhappy or angry desire to have what someone else has, or very concerned about protecting and keeping something. Okay. And this is also now tying into our Shastra. Envy is considered one of the main anarthas, matsarya, in our Vedic teachings, right? So anartha means, what does anartha mean? It means unwanted conditioning. We all have unwanted conditioning, whether it's from society, maybe it's from our own qualities, maybe it's some of our conditioning that we picked up along the way from friends or someone else, family. And so we have this conditioning in our human body. And part of the process of bhakti is anartha nivritti, is actually clearing these anarthas, right? Clearing these anarthas that are in our mind, in our heart, so that we can actually develop love for Krishna, for each other, because that's what's getting in the way. So when we think about these definitions, I want everyone to think about some examples of envy, right? You can kind of feel like, oh, well, do I really feel envious of other people? We can think about it. One example, I just wrote down a few examples. I have some notes here, by the way. But one is being happy for someone else's success. This is sometimes hard to do, right? Actually being happy for someone else's success, whether it's materially or spiritually. Whether it's materially, someone gets promoted, someone gets a nice house, right? Maybe someone's doing really well, successful in their life. And we might be thinking, what about me? What's going on with my life, right? Even spiritually, I remember one time my friend, he really was serious spiritually, and he wanted to get initiated into in our lineage. And, he's in his 20s at the time, and he was very serious. And one of his other friends was actually just getting initiated. He's taking initiation the next day. And he was feeling so much envy because he didn't have the discipline to kind of do what was needed for himself to get initiated. And he was telling me the story a couple of years ago. He was saying that actually it was one of his best friends, right? It's one of his best friends. And he was like burning with envy, with jealousy. Like, this person's going to take this step, and I'm not ready to take that step. But, it's like you're kind of projecting that. And so he actually called his friend and the day before his initiation, and he said, I just want to be really honest with you. You're one of my best friends, and I am feeling really envious. I'm not happy for you right now. Like, and I'm just feeling this way. I want to let you know that's all on me, actually. It's nothing you did wrong. And it felt very humbling for him to share this, right, with his friend. But when he shared it, he felt like a burden came off him. And his friend was very mature. He understood. He said, I understand. And he actually shared this friend, when he was sharing his envy, he said that if I didn't share this, if I came tomorrow to your initiation, I might be like a little weird. I might not want to interact with you fully. I might not congratulate you with my whole heart. I might be like, kind of holding on a little bit. So we can see how we might do this. And when he had released that, he was able to show up, and he was actually able to be there because he was able to own that he felt jealous, he felt envious, right? So we can see in our own life, how sometimes we can't be happy fully for someone. We're like kind of happy, but then we kind of hope they fail, right? Sometimes we hope, if we're really honest, we sometimes hope that people fail. We're like, oh, and even we see this in the secular society when, like, we all see some celebrity, there's some big scandal, right? There's what happens every, couple months or weeks, actually every day on the news, there's some scandal, right? And everyone's kind of like, oh, it's like kind of the joke of the day. Everyone kind of derives some pleasure from the news of like, my life isn't that great, but that person's also suffering. They have so much money or fame or whatnot, right? Does everyone agree? Yes, okay. So we can see that. Now, also, it could be some envy towards someone who's maybe more intelligent than us, right? Maybe they're more intelligent. Maybe they're more like attractive physically, or we think they're more beautiful. Oh, they have this. Why don't I have this? Maybe it could be any quality someone has. Maybe they're very creative, right? Maybe they're very enthusiastic, courageous. So we can see that. Maybe it's someone who's doing things that we want to be doing that we don't get a chance to do. We're looking, on Facebook and on Instagram, and we say, oh, they're traveling to Dubai, or they're in Greece, on vacation. Why am I not doing that? I'm just stuck in New Jersey in the winter, right? Sort of thing. We can feel envious, right? Can see that. We can be honest here, right, everyone? Also, we can see that this also happens in mentorship. Sometimes we're mentoring someone. I teach Mridanga. I was mentioning the youth. Having invested in the youth when I was investing in the youth growing up, it's very interesting because when you're investing in someone, that they might become better than you at it, actually, when you're teaching someone. So you have to monitor that envy, because if you're actually envious of someone that you're mentoring, then that can destroy the relationship, actually, because one day that person could be better than you at whatever you're teaching them. They could be more, sometimes someone brings someone to the spiritual community to the temple, and then, a couple of years down the road, they become more advanced, even than the person who brought them. So that can be like it can hit our ego, it can really hurt. We're like, oh, I brought that person, I taught them, and now all of a sudden, right, they're more advanced. And also the research shows that social media is like the #1 trigger for envy. Social media. For those of you who use it, how many people use social media here? Like some Facebook or this, that, right? Many of us, because we're seeing everyone's highlights. We're seeing their highlights of their life. And we're thinking, my highlights aren't matching their highlights sometimes, right? But we can actually see that people are putting their highlights, they're not putting their lowlights on social media. So there's a distorted reality that comes with that. Okay, so we all understand that envy is there. We can kind of examine in our life. Think of also your examples in your life of things that are coming up for you as you think of this. Now, when we feel envy, what are three signs that we have envy in our heart, right? The first one is, we call these the 3 C's. The first is complaining. Now, there might be genuine complaints that we have of sometimes other devotees or something, or someone, or some friend circle, family, colleagues, whatever the case might be, whoever we're struggling with. But we can see sometimes if we're really honest, sometimes our complaints are envy actually too, dealing with envy. The second C is criticizing. This is a big one. Often when we feel envious of others, we tend to criticize them. And this is very dangerous. Even in our tradition, in the bhakti path, we call this Vaishnava aparad, actually, to criticize other devotees. And we say this, but we do it, including myself. I'll put my hand up, and I think we can all put our hands up. Sometimes we do criticize, sometimes, right? Even in our mind, criticize others. And so this is a very dangerous mentality that can creep up when we, again, project our own sense of insecurity onto other people and start criticizing them. Lastly, we compare. This is a very dangerous thing to do also, because all of us are very unique in our ability to do whatever service, talents, gifts that were given by Krishna, right? Can we all agree with that? And so when we compare ourselves and say, this devotee is doing that much service, why can't I do that? Or this devotee is leading such a nice kirtan, I can't do that. But meanwhile, maybe that devotee can't do what you're doing, right? So we have to understand and appreciate what we can do and appreciate what others can do, instead of comparing ourselves and making ourselves feel insecure and feel less than, actually, or make others feel less than. I don't want to do that. So comparing is very dangerous, because it's like apples to oranges, as they say, right? The equivalence is not there. We all have different strengths and abilities. So comparing yourselves and saying, I can't play mridanga like them, well, that person might not be able to cook like you, or to dress the deities, or to do this or do that, right? Different services, different strengths. So these are the 3 C's. We can all, again, think about in our life, where do we apply these? Where do we see these? Where we end up complaining, criticizing, and comparing ourselves to others. Generally, it can be a sign of some hidden envy is there. Now, what's the danger of envy? Prabhuji mentions this in many places in the Bhagavatam, in the Gita, but he talks about this kind of what is spiritual consciousness? What is Krishna consciousness? We use this word so often. What is, I'm practicing Krishna consciousness. I was thinking in my life that Krishna consciousness is actually a state of mind. It's a state of mind. It's a state of a Vaishnava. Well, what does that mean? And Prabhuji mentions this in this verse, that a Vaishnava is always a well-wisher of others. It's always a well-wisher. Now, there's like material consciousness, which is based off the ego, and there's spiritual consciousness, which is based off who we actually are, our real identity. And envy, if we aren't very careful of envy, if we don't really check this and are not aware of this, it can create a very much like a kind of a dog-eat-dog environment. Dog-eat-dog world, as they say, where there's a subtle competition that's always going on. Even in our community, it can come in there if we're not careful. Versus in a spiritual consciousness, and what Prabhupada says, Vaikuntha consciousness, we're always appreciating others actually for what they're doing. For example, if we see the gopis in Vrindavan, they are always appreciative. And if there's envy, it's actually like this competition to see who can serve Krishna the most. But it's not done in a way to put anyone down, right? It's done in a way to actually uplift everyone to their highest potential. Does everyone see the difference, right? So we can see that envy, it's very damaging if we're not mindful of it. It can kind of wreak havoc in our own spiritual life and also in the communities that we're part of. So it's like a subtle destroyer It's like a subtle cancer that almost we don't even know is happening, but it can kind of get in the way of friendships, of relationships. So this might be uncomfortable, but one of the things I was thinking was that all these emotions actually have a message, something that we have to think about. All these emotions, it's mentioned in the 7th canto that in the purport, Sharma mentions that every anartha has actually a meaning for the devotee of the Lord, has a meaning. And so envy is actually a messenger. We think about envy in like the purest form, sending us a little bit of a message, right? Sometimes we want to like repress it. We want to hide away. Oh, I'm not envious. But what if we can say, oh, I'm feeling that way, actually? Maybe it's showing me something. Maybe I need to understand what the message is. So envy is a messenger in 2 ways we can see. The first message is that it shows a kind of a lack of internal security within ourselves, of who we are, our sense of self, and our relationship with Krishna. Now I'll talk about this more on what I mean by relationship with Krishna and what it means by insecurity in just a little bit. The second is that envy is about us projecting our unrealized potential on other people, right? So it shows where we might need to actually kind of develop ourselves spiritually, maybe even materially, but really spiritually. So it's a messenger for these 2 things. So we've defined envy. We look at what the message is of the envy. It could be these 2 things when we're really thinking about it, right? Now, how do we move past envy? Does everyone here acknowledge? Raise your hand if you feel envious sometimes. Okay, some of you are being honest. The rest of you are just too shy to raise your hand, I'm sure. So how do we move forward from this? Kind of what can we do spiritually? And we'll talk a little bit about, because Gaur Purnima is also coming up. We're right in between Nityananda Trayodasi and Gaur Purnima. So we'll talk a little bit about what we can do from a spiritual perspective. 3 things, I'll give you 3 steps and 4 tools to deal with envy. 3 steps to manage envy. The first is honesty and awareness. So we talked about defining envy, the signs of envy, the 3 C's, and why it's there, right? The message. Now we're going to look at how do we manage it? So the first bit is honesty and self-awareness. If we're honest with ourselves, sometimes we can't even deal with a problem because we're not honest, right? We can see in our lives we're kind of hiding from the issue, right? So it takes a certain level of knowing that actually we're quite fallen. If we really think about it, we have a lot of imperfections, as human beings. And when we actually acknowledge that, then we can move forward in doing something about it, right? Sometimes we have this complex, I don't have any problems. I don't have anything to work on. I don't have any issues. Anyone who gives me feedback, oh, no, you're just making that up. But actually that's stifling our growth, because there's a lot we can learn from our entire life and the feedback that we're getting in our life, right? So honesty and awareness. Oh, went a little quick there. The second is acceptance. So we have to accept that we are fallen, we're imperfect. We have to accept that, and that we need to continue to grow. The example is given that in the spiritual community, we're all in a hospital looking for treatment. Some patients might be further along in their treatment than others, but we're all still in the hospital, right? So we all still need work. We all still need to chant. We still need our sadhana. We still need to do this work because it's very important for us and for everyone around us. And then lastly, reflect and transform daily. I was thinking that we say that we're practicing Krishna consciousness. We don't say that we're Krishna conscious, right? We say we're practicing. What does that mean? Practicing means every day. Right? We brush our teeth every day. We take a shower every day, hopefully, right? But even if you're playing a sport, you have to practice. Right? When you're learning, you have to practice every day. You have to practice multiple times a week. And because when we're practicing, we start to grow, actually. So just like this in Krishna consciousness, in our spiritual growth, we have to practice every day. We have to affirm every day. We have to have our sadhana, different things, because every day we're building upon the previous days. We're growing. Now I'll give you 4 tools. Is this making sense, by the way, for everyone? Okay, everyone's very quiet. I don't know if it's landing or it's not landing, or Everyone seems very serious. 4 steps. The first, so I'll give you 4 steps, and they're broken out in a couple ways that we can deal with envy. It's a very kind of difficult anartha to deal with. The first is prayer. Prayer is very powerful. We can pray to Krishna, to Radha Shyam Sundar, that when we're struggling with this emotion, when we kind of, even sometimes we want, there's one word, I think it's a German word, it's called Schadenfreude, which means to actually feel happiness at other people's demise, right? We can see how like sick that is. Sometimes we feel that, right? We see someone, like we were talking about earlier, we see someone fail, we kind of like feel good about it. And we're like, oh, like that's, we won't admit it to anyone, but we kind of feel it inside. You know, I'm not doing so bad after all. Like they're also doing bad. Like maybe they can continue doing bad, right? Then you see them, oh, Hari Bol Prabhu, right? So like it kind of might be like that. So we can pray to Krishna to remove these anarthas from our heart. We can pray really earnestly that you please, you're the expert surgeon. You help me remove this anartha from my heart. Prayer is really powerful because we are recognizing that we can't do everything by ourselves, that we need help, that we need the guidance of our guru, of Srila Prabhupada, and we need the guidance of Radha Shyam Sundar as well to help us grow spiritually, right? And then the second tool is creating a culture of appreciation. This is really important. Envy actually is a perverted reflection of appreciation, actually. When we're envious of someone, we're actually appreciative of what they can do that we can't do, actually, that we're not able to do. It's actually appreciation. So we can make a practice to appreciate each other, actually. And it actually helps reduce our envy. It's a very practical measure. And we should create a culture of appreciation. We should create a culture. The reason I say culture is because it's very easy to just do it sometimes or think about it and never share it with other people, right? Never share it. You might think, oh, I'm so appreciative of my spouse or my partner or my kids or these devotees or my family, but you never share it with them, right? I've heard so many stories in the last many years, even with COVID, so many people have passed, unfortunately, and all of our families have been affected. I think everyone here in this room, in one way or another, right, has been affected in the last many years with something. And I've heard from so many people, and I've seen it in my own life, where we think that, you know, we have all the time in the world to express our appreciation to people. And then someone leaves this world, right? They pass away. And then we just say, you know, oh, if I could go back and just share one thing, how much they meant to me, how much I appreciated them, actually, I would pay anything for that. You know, I would do anything for that. But we lost the opportunity. So we should create a culture of appreciation where we're regularly appreciating, you know, everyone is doing so much, actually, for us, for each other, that we should be ready to always see them and to give words of affirmation. It's actually a love language, you know, to be able to do that. For example, in our family, in my family, we created this thing a couple of years ago, right? Many years ago now, where on someone's birthday, we all meet, you know, take prasad together. And it's really nice, you know, where we've just created this culture where you appreciate that person, whoever's birthday is. So everyone goes around the table, and now it's even in Sunday school, I think, right, where we do that from my parents. But we go around the table and we appreciate the qualities of that person. So everyone speaks for like 3 to 5 minutes on that person, just to let them know like how much we appreciate who you are. And I don't even think once a year is enough to be doing that. We should be doing it regularly, but at least once in a while we should do that, you know, let people know how much they mean to us. Because the most empowered and dynamic people are also the most positive people. Right? If we really want to have that Krishna conscious mindset of the Vaishnava, we have to create a very positive mindset, very positive mindset of seeing the best in ourselves and other people. Very much so. And again, we shouldn't be miser with our kindness. Share it when you feel it, share it with others. Send them that text message, go to a devotee, let them know how much they mean to you. Even try it after this. It's homework for everyone. Let's all pick maybe one person even after this class and tell them how much you appreciate them. You can go to them and share for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You'll find that actually you'll be more enriched from that experience than even that person will be, maybe. right? It's not just for them you're doing it for yourself too. We're also somewhat selfish, right? So it can be both benefit from that. And the reason why it's also important to build a culture of appreciation is that psychologists, so I do leadership coaching and whatnot for companies and corporates, and we study psychology. And what's interesting is in psychology, it's shared that the brain has a negativity bias. It's called a negativity bias. What that means is that we tend to look at the negative, kind of naturally speaking. The brain has a negativity bias where we look at the negative more than the positive. So to give you a practical example, if, let's say for me, for example, I'll just pick on me because I'm speaking right now. Let's say, a couple of devotees came after the class and said, Prabhu, nice class. We appreciated your class. Okay, great. Let's say you're leading a kirtan, you're doing some service, right? Then one person comes to you and has kind of like a critical comment or like a little bit negative comment, right? You go home, and often what our brain does is we focus on that negative comment, even though we heard 10 positive comments, right? 10 positive things. We think of that one negative, we amplify that, and we just make a whole mountain of that. Go, what's going on? Why did they say that? What was I doing wrong? And then you start to kind of like build that, right? So we all have this negativity mindset. And really being Krishna conscious is we have to consciously work on developing. It doesn't just automatically happen. We have to do that through our spiritual practices. We build a more positive mindset, actually, that we can do that. We have so many examples. Srila Prabhupada is such an incredible example of always positive, actually, always positive. We'll talk more about him later. Okay, so we have prayer, culture of appreciation. Then we have self-development, our own development. Often when we are envious, we are not working on ourselves, actually. We can be envious of what someone else can do, but what about what we can do? We can work on that, right? I may never be an incredible, let's say, cook or something, but I can work on being the best mridanga player, let's say for me, or kirtan chanter, whatever the case, whatever I do, that I can do that, and that could be my service, right? Similarly, we all have our own strengths that we can work on and build. And when we work on our own strengths, we actually become less envious of other people because we're actually investing in ourselves, right? Same thing spiritually. When we're developing ourselves spiritually and investing in ourselves spiritually, we're less envious of other people, okay? So for example, it might be, again, getting training in what we're doing, taking on another service, making time to invest in yourself is really important. And then lastly, I want to say is widening our spiritual perspective. So we talked about prayer, culture of appreciation, development, and widening our spiritual perspective. What I mean by widening our spiritual perspective is that actually, if we really think about it, no one's our friend or enemy, actually. Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj mentions that he's talking to his father, and he says this wonderful verse that I pulled here. He says that, O king, the source of my strength, of which you're asking, is also the source of your strength, right? Indeed, the original source of all kinds of strength is one. He is not only your strength and mine, but the only strength for everyone. Without him, no one can get any strength. So if you think about it from that perspective, if we're envious of someone because we don't have what they have, then we're actually kind of not having faith in Krishna, if you really think about it. Because Krishna is giving everything to everyone, right? All our talents, our skills, our abilities, whatever we have in our life is actually a gift that's given by God, if you really think about it. And it can be taken away at any time, actually. We falsely think we're the proprietor, we're the controller, we're the owner, when we're like the rental car owner, we're the user of the car. We're not the owner of the car. And so actually everything is given by Krishna. So if we can think in that vein, even philosophically, that he's given me certain strengths, he's given someone else certain strengths and gifts, so I can trust his plan for me, I can trust his plan for others. So I can be happy for others, because of if I'm not happy for others, I'm not happy for myself as well, actually, for what I'm given. Or we can see that. Widening our spiritual perspective, that that Krishna has a plan for everyone, he has a plan for us as well. And sometimes our plan doesn't happen when other people's plan is happening. We have to also understand that. Sometimes someone is like, their plan is going very amazingly, right, in their life. And our plan might be not so great at that time. We might be going through a rough time, right? Sometimes we're going through an amazing time where all the successes are coming, and our friend might be struggling, right, having a rough time in their life. So knowing that, like, over time it'll even out, but everyone's journey is different. It's very different. We can't compare ourselves to say, oh, that person is doing so well, I'm not doing so well, right? Like, why am I struggling? Versus the other way around, right? So we want to be mindful of that, trusting Krishna's plan, widening our perspective. And also another way to widen our perspective is to also appreciate the quality behind the envy. Often our envy is based off of the action that someone's doing. So we might say, this person, man, they're such an incredible, they dress the deities so well, right? Or they chant so nice, or they're so studious, they're so intelligent, they know all the Shastra, they know so many different books they've memorized. And we might be envious of that, right? Or we might say, oh, this person, even from a material perspective, they have this big business, they're doing really well, they're making a lot of money, they're traveling all over the world. But what's the quality that we're appreciative of behind all these things? So maybe we're envious of their level of discipline, right? Maybe we're envious of their level of courage. Maybe we're envious of how focused they are to study. We're saying they're intelligent, but maybe they weren't so intelligent 10 years ago and they worked at it. They were very focused, right? So we can see that, we can appreciate the quality. Maybe someone quit their job and started a business. We can appreciate their courage for doing that. Okay, and we say, maybe I don't have that courage right now to do that, but I appreciate their courage. And I can build that courage in my own way, right? So by examining, again, widening our perspective around what that quality is that we're actually envious of, we can actually work on that quality. We may never have that talent per se, as much as that other person may have, because they're gifted in a certain way, but we can work on that quality. That certainly we can do. That's within our control to be able to do that. And the rest is not in our control. So we shouldn't really bother about it. Okay, does that make sense, everyone? Okay. 4 tools. Is it helpful? Okay, cool. So we talked about these 4: prayer, a culture of appreciation, self-development, and widening our spiritual perspective and understanding. These 4 can help us mitigate envy. Obviously, when we're in this material body, it's not going to go away fully. That's why we're here. We need to work on it. But we can mitigate it, and part of our growth is to work on mitigating it, actually. So we can develop a Krishna conscious mindset. Now we talked about, and I'm going to start to wrap up. We're going to just make a couple more points and then open up for questions. How do we deal with, we talked about like defining envy. We talked about the 3 C's, how it comes about, tools for managing envy. This is when we feel envious. What about when people feel envious, when we feel envy toward us from others? We're doing something and we feel like, someone might be feeling envious. They might make a comment toward us, etc. There's a nice example. Actually, Krishna gives himself as an example of this. There's so many good examples in our literatures and the many different pastimes. There's a great example of Krishna dealing with envy. Does anyone know what this picture is of? Yeah, Rajasuya sacrifice. Krishna's being honored, right, by all the kings, by the Pandavas, all the kings of the world, and Shishupal is there. And this is a great example, actually, in this pastime, and this whole pastime of Shishupal and Krishna, of how do you deal with envy. The Lord is showing us himself how to deal with it, actually. Shishupal was the cousin of Krishna. We know that, going back, Shishupal was Jai and Vijay from that past time, and actually he's an eternal servant of Lord Vishnu. So, but in the past time, they were cursed, and they came in many different forms in different yugas. And Shishupal had this extreme envy. He was envy personified, right? He was like, he hated Krishna, actually. And he's Krishna's cousin, right? You can think, family member. We talked about family, friends, whatever the case might be, but there can be envy, right? So he hated Krishna. He was so envious of Krishna. And especially when he saw Krishna being honored in this way, right? In front of all the kings publicly, it really hit him. He lost it. He really lost it. And he started to really, in front of everyone, he started to insult Krishna in such derogatory terms, actually, right? So you can see how Krishna dealt with this. 3 things that he did that we can take from this pastime. Couple things. So 3 ways we can deal with envy from others. The first is patience and detachment. Krishna showed patience and detachment when dealing with Shishupal. He knew that Shishupal had this hate for him. He was very patient with him. He didn't get angry, and he made sure he kind of detached. Sometimes when we can kind of take things personally, right? When someone maybe makes a critical remark, is envious toward us, we take it like very personally, right? We think that, what did I do wrong? Okay, maybe if I just don't do this one thing, if I don't shine my light brighter, if I kind of like just hide in the corner, then everything will be good. But it's not really solving the issue, actually, right? We want to be who we are. And so, but patience and detachment is key, that we don't have to take it personally. Often when someone is envious, it's because that they're dealing with something within their heart that's unresolved, right? Secondly, Krishna also had some clear boundaries. This is also helpful. Kind of knowing what we can take and what we can't take. Krishna said to Shishupal and to, I think, his mother, he said, 100 times I'll take the insult. After 100, then I'll finish him. Then I have to deal with him. So not that we should kill someone, by the way, but we can see Krishna's example of having boundaries, right? That's the pastime of the Lord. But he had that boundary of like, okay, 100 times I'll take it, but not that we should just take abuse, from someone, or just take criticism because we want to be humbler than a blade of grass, and we want to be humble. No, humility is not just taking abuse. It's also knowing what the line is for us, right? And making sure that we also remove ourselves if it's crossing that line, essentially. And then third, we can protect ourselves as needed. This is if and when we need, not all the time we need to do this. But you can see that sometimes we have to defend ourselves. Sometimes we have to call out some behavior. We can also do that, not in a violent way. I've seen this example. Krishna had to take care of him, and this was done in a certain way. But in our circle, in our Vaishnava communities, in our families, we can be mindful to sometimes we have to express something to someone. That, okay, like you said this really hurt me the way you were saying it. I would appreciate if you didn't do this again. Or sometimes we have to express that instead of thinking that we have to just take it and deal with envy. And sometimes someone might not even know how they're coming across in terms of their envy. They may not even know that they're like being envious. So sometimes when you share with someone that Prabhu, or someone, you can say that I'm feeling this, just kind of a feeling I'm having. I'm not trying to attack you or to accuse you. This feeling I'm having, sometimes it gives people an opportunity to actually own what's going on for them, and share that what's going on. Sometimes we have to remove ourselves also from the situation if we feel like it's not healthy for us too, right? So patience, detachment, clear boundaries, and protecting ourselves when needed. And the key with patience, as mentioned, is not taking it so personally. It's natural for us to want to do that. Okay, wrapping up for our session. It's Gaur Purnim. It's coming up in 2 to 3 weeks, I believe. Incredible example of dealing with envy and of being free of envy was Mahaprabhu, actually, if you think about it. And Nityananda Prabhu, who we just celebrated his appearance day. And in a time in India where the caste system, and there was so much hierarchy and abuses of power, and so many different things that were happening in the caste system, Mahaprabhu revolutionized the whole situation, where he said that it doesn't matter if you're born a Brahmana or this or that, anyone can obtain love of Krishna, love of God, right? And Mahaprabhu was actually really a revolutionary, and he didn't leave much behind if you think about it. In the more physical sense, we have the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have other things, but I think the only thing that's attributed to Mahaprabhu is the Shikshashtakam, right? And I was thinking that in the first line, if you're an author, like the beginning is kind of where you really want to get across your most important message, right? He opens the Shikshashtakam with Cheto Darpana Marjanam, right? Cheto Darpana Marjanam, meaning cleaning, Cheto Darpana, the mirror of the heart, the mirror of the mind, right? Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam. And Mahaprabhu is imploring us, and actually this is exactly what we're talking about, so I'm just tying this class together. But he's imploring, Krishna, he's imploring for us to be able to clean the mirror of the heart, actually. He's saying that that is so important. There's dust that's on the mirror of this heart that's accumulated from many lifetimes, actually, right? We talked about anartha, nirvritti, unwanted conditioning, these anarthas. There's a lot of this dust in the form of greed, false pride, envy, illusion, right? Anger, so many different things that we're dealing with. And so part of our spiritual process, actually the essence of it is to clean this mirror of the heart. It's a practice, it's our sadhana. And how do we do it? Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, by chanting the holy names of the Lord. So that's really important. That's the major component of our sadhana, is chanting, whether it's our japa, whether it's kirtan, is chanting the holy names of the Lord, because that cleanses the mirror of the heart. In addition to that is what we talked about today. We also want to work on, while we're chanting side by side, want to work on fostering this healthy mindset within ourselves so we can relate to the Vaishnavas and actually cleanse this mirror and do that side by side, actually. And again, just to tie this up, when we create this environment where there's no envy, where there's an appreciation for each other, then we can actually create a Vaikuntha-like atmosphere. Shri Radha Sham Sundar ki, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subramanian ki, Shri Gauranitai ki. When we do this, when we create this environment where we're free from envy, we can actually create a very, very much Vaikuntha-like atmosphere, even on earth, where there's such an appreciation, such a positivity, and even our community, I see it so many times where so many people love coming to this community and being part of it because there's so much appreciation and love among the Vaishnavas, actually, right? So we should always be mindful to guard that mindset. We don't want this envy to creep in and destroy things. And I want to end off with a quote by our founder Acharya and guide, Srila Prabhupada. And he says this, he speaks very directly toward envy. He says that we should utilize our talents without being envious of others. This is from a letter, October 6th, Mayapur, 1974. You should do your best, but you should not be envious of others. In material life, there is simply envy of others' progress. We talked about this. But in spiritual life, one encourages another. Oh, you're doing very nice. That is Radharani. She says, oh, here is a very nice devotee. Please, Krishna, you accept him. Right? So again, this material consciousness versus Krishna consciousness is a very big difference, the gulf of a difference between the two. It's actually like a 180-degree difference. Material consciousness is always about how can I exploit others? How can I put others down so I get put up? I can get all the resources, money, wealth, fame, name, whatever the case might be, prestige, security. But in spiritual consciousness, we're always looking toward how can we do our best? We're imperfect. We're all striving and struggling in our own way. But how can we do our best to serve others and uplift everyone around us, even in the smallest of ways? So I want to end there. Thank you all very much. I talked about many different things. A couple things was, just to do a quick recap, definitions of envy, jealousy. Talked about the 3 C's, talked about the 4 tools, right? Prayer, appreciation, creating a culture of appreciation, self-development, and widening our spiritual perspective. And then we also talked about the message that envy sends, and then how we can utilize that in the example of Shishupal and dealing with envy toward us as well. And Mahaprabhu's example of cleansing the mirror of our heart. So I want to end there. Thank you very much for being attentive. Haribol, thank you. Yeah. We have time for 1 or 2 questions, or? Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes. What was that? Do you have a mic?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Anuj Prabhuji. Very nicely articulated and very nicely described. I can see, always we say the good fruits come from good trees. So I can see that, all glories to Devkinandan Prabhuji and Gundicha Mataji. Really, I really appreciate them. We are really fortunate having such a wonderful devotees in our. I saw you like 10 years back. You are like a little kid for me, and now you are really grown up. So really, you just talk about that envy. Material, everyone has that emotions. It's not like it's obvious, everyone. But when we come to like Krishna consciousness and like in this ISKCON movement, especially all this association, we feel, oh, they are doing good and all that. But really, this works, what you said, how you can go through that and improve ourselves. So it really works. And thank you. Last but not least, our Srila Prabhupada, because of him, we are just, we can improve our life very nicely. Thank you so much.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you. So much for your reflections. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Haribol.
Very wonderful session. I'm just relating this to myself personally, right? So I have a feeling which I'm not sure whether I can qualify it as envy or jealousy or somewhere in the middle, or right. Whenever I see someone more accomplished, right, like either intellectually or it used to be only with intellectual things, right? But now I'm saying it's like spreading to everything, right? It's not like I want them to fail or like I feel miserable or anything, but internally I feel so less, right? And what it makes me is like I'm not able to do the things which I am capable of doing myself. Right? Like I become bad at it because the fear overwhelms the mind. So is this a gradation of envy or jealousy or what kind of feeling is this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It can be more of just even just like a little bit of you being hard on yourself, kind of like the inner critic, you know, seeing others. It sounds like it's maybe not envy toward other people, but almost like anger toward yourself, frustration toward yourself. You know, I would say that's the feeling. We have to be careful of that too, because again, going back to this point, that appreciating ourselves is also important. Not flattering ourselves, that can build our false ego, but appreciating what we can do, what others can do. So maybe, you know, your friend, whoever you're thinking about, maybe you're not doing what that person can do. Maybe that's like not naturally what you're the best at, or you don't have that approach or mindset. But there's things that you do that are very unique to who you are, right? So being able to see that and actually, like, you know, one of the points I was going to make in this, which I didn't get a chance to make, was that we can actually also make like a strengths and weaknesses chart for ourselves. You know, I did this a couple of years ago and it was really helpful for me, where I made a really getting clear on what are the things I'm good at and appreciating those things. And also what are the things I'm not so good at, you know, and knowing what those are. Then that helps like kind of foster more self-confidence of those things. And it's still, I'm not saying it's easy, it's a challenge, but those are things you can use to continue to improve on yourself. And instead of, again, comparing yourself, those 3 C's, that's going to drain your energy. And actually you can take that energy, save that energy instead of comparing, and apply it in your own life for your own well-being. Hence that development tool as well from those 4 tools. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Very well. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Announcement, sorry. The questions. Today's Sunday feast is sponsored by 2 families, Sarvasundar Gopal Prabhu and Mataji, for their son's birthday. Drona, they are here. Please come forward. Let's bless Drona with 3 times Haribol. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. And the second is Gopi Kanta Krishna Prabhu and Mataji is sponsoring. On behalf of his father, Satya Krishna Das, 4th Shraddha ceremony. So again, let's chant 3 times Haribol as blessings. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. We have cake cutting in 2 minutes. So quick announcement. So, this coming Thursday is Ekadasi, Vijay Ekadasi, fasting from grains and beans. And then Parana time on Friday is 6:48 a.m. to 10:23 a.m. The coming Saturday is Mahashivratri. Fasting is optional, so you can do if you like to. And March 6th, biggest festival coming up is Gaur Purnima, Holi. We'll be celebrating in the evening, 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. So all are welcome. Please invite others. This is the most important festival for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So, and also we have book distribution score for the pleasure of Shri Radha Syam Sundar, Shri Gaurnitai, Shri Jagannath, Baldev Sudramanat, Shri Sudarshan, Shri Panchatattva, Shri Prabhupada and assembled Vaishnavas. 11 Bhagavad Gita door-to-door distributed by Bimal Gupta Prabhu, Ravi Prabhu, Jagadish Singh Prabhu, and also distributed 4 books of Nimai pastimes distributed by Srimati Mataji. So let's thank both of them. Haribol. Another 7. And 7 more books. Paramanand Chaitanya Prabhu and Sandeep Prabhu, 7 more books. So let's thank all of them with loud. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. So we are looking at 190 plus 70, so $260 Lakshmi points. So now we'll have cake cutting. Yeah. Can come. So someone can sing.
Hare Krishna to you, Hare Krishna to you, Hare Krishna, dear Drona, Hare Krishna to you. May you never take birth again, may you never take again. May you never take birth again and go back to Godhead. Haribo.